very early on, Mary has been recognized as a model for our discipleship. In the 3rd century already, the Council of Ephesus pronounced her Theotokos. And sometimes we think that means Mother of God, which loosely translated does, but literally it means God bearer. So she's Theotokos because she bears God, literally. And what this council was really trying to get at is the identity of Jesus. Who is this baby that she births? And what the council and our tradition has said is that this baby is God in the flesh, fully God and fully human. So Mary is rightly called Mother of all humanity because she is the bearer of God's universal love to the world. And it's beautifully displayed if we look at the accounts in Luke and Matthew of who are the first people that Mary literally bears the infant baby Jesus to. In Matthew, we know it very well, it's the Magi who come from the east, these strange characters that come and visit the baby Jesus, which Mary bears to them. And they are supposed to represent people from all over the nations. They're not Jews, they're not Israelites, they're foreigners. And so the first people that Mary encounters this love of God in the flesh with are people from all over the world. See, because that's what God's love is like. It wants to reach not only a chosen few, but everybody. And now if we turn to Luke in the 2nd chapter, the first people that Mary holds the baby Jesus to in her arms and presents to are the shepherds. And now the shepherds, let me tell you, they weren't, the hot shots of society. They were pretty much just lowly class, very much unimportant in those times of Jesus. What Pope Francis might call the peripheries. So God does not see walls. God does not see labels. No, the first people that God encounters in the Gospel of Luke are people that are deemed low and unimportant. And you see, because God's love is like that. It cannot be contained. And just like it fills Mary for 9 months, it literally spills out. That's what God's love is like. It spills into every nook and cranny of our human existence. And now, what does that mean for us that we call ourselves Christians? Can we call ourselves Christians? Can I call myself a Christian? If I'm not like Mary, bearing this love for the whole world? St. Augustine said that temperance of a greedy person is no temperance at all. And a few hundred years before, St. Paul's going to say that I may have mountains, faith to move all the mountains in the world, but if I have no love, I have nothing. You see, for us as Christians, having faith doesn't mean, just believing and assenting to some, truths and theological doctrines. Those are important. But really, having faith as a Christian means to love like God does. To be like Mary. How can we be like Mary? Well, just as Mary heard the word of God, allowed the word of God to take root inside of her and grow, we too are called to listen to God's voice, to give our own fiat, our own yes to God, and allow Jesus a place in our hearts to grow. Have a womb for Jesus where we nourish the baby Jesus and we allow him to grow and to take hold of us until it literally flows over for the good of the world. We're in the time of Advent. And St. Bernard said that there's 3 Advents. The 2 Advents, we know what we celebrate in this time, right? We're expecting the first coming, the first Advent of Jesus in Christmas, and the second Advent of his second coming. But St. Bernard talks about a 3rd Advent, and that is the Advent in between Christmas and Jesus' second coming, and that advent, he says, is in our hearts. It's when we allow Jesus to be born inside of us and to grow and to make his home inside of us. So that's the first way we could be like Mary, is to literally impregnate ourselves with the word of God, with Jesus himself, and let him live inside of us. And the second, like Mary's, as soon as this love came out of her, it wasn't for her to keep, but she took it everywhere. She took him to the Magi. She took him to the shepherds. I love how it says when the angel Gabriel comes to announce to Mary that she will bear a son, in haste, right away, she goes to her cousin in need, looking out to the peripheries. So the second part is taking this love to all of the world, especially those that are unimportant in the eyes of the world, but are most important in the eyes of God. I'd like to share with you a little bit of the power of being like this, of being a Mary in our world. See, I'm standing here today, not by my own doing, but because someone was a Mary to me. See, I didn't grow up Christian or Catholic. I did all my sacraments a couple years ago. But somebody was a Mary to me who had Jesus inside of them and went and reached out to me. I was like one of those shepherds, unimportant, doing very, very unimportant things in my life as a young person. Now that I look back at it, I was struggling with drug abuse. I was an alcoholic. I lived to party. But somebody was a Mary to me and looked at me and brought me to encounter Jesus in a retreat. And I met Jesus there. I'm not sure exactly what happened still, but I just remember thinking that everything that I've ever been looking for is here. I just didn't know it was called God. And God has transformed my life for the better. But somebody had to go and be a Mary for me. And now I see my life like Mary. I see that I am called to allow Jesus to continue to grow inside of me and continue to make the changes that he wants to make in my life. And that I need to go out and carry Jesus into the world. And there's been so many other stories like me. I have a group of young adults. We're a community. And they, in a lot of ways, are like Mary. They like to reach out to the periphery. So we went to the homeless one time. We have a community there. And I went to go visit them to say hi. And I met Matt, who was about my age. He jumped out of a tent. I had never seen him before. And he looked normal. He wasn't on anything. And so I invited him to a retreat. Long story short, he had been clean for a while, and he was just trying to get his feet off the ground. He had an experience similar to mine in this retreat. And now he is off of the streets. He got a job. He went back home to New York to reconcile with his parents, and now works at a homeless shelter and started a Bible study there. Now that wasn't me. That was just Jesus inside of me that wanted to reach this person. And all I had to do was be like Mary. And you see, that's what God invites us to do in this time. Is to allow Jesus to take root in our lives and to go out into all the nooks and crannies of the world and to bring that light, that hope to people. And let Jesus do his thing. So, I have 2 action steps for you. The first is to reflect and think about who are the people on the peripheries of your life. It could be existential peripheries like the streets, like the homeless. It could be people in your own home. The peripheries are just people that are not being focused on. That's all of us. So once you have identified that, Maybe think about what your own experience has been like with encountering Jesus, and find a way to share this light that you have inside of you with this person on the peripheries. Either go to them, like Mary carrying Jesus in her arms, or invite them to something where they can encounter Jesus like they invited me. The second is a little homework, is to read through the Pope's new encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, which means it's on fraternal love. It's beautiful reflections. And if you're like me, and you like audiobooks and you like to listen to them when you're driving, it's on YouTube in a couple of different formats. And reflect on what that means for your life.